Welcome to Strategy Talk, where the authors and editors discuss news and events with a splash of history. Our host today is Dan Masterson. Joining him is Jim Dunnigan, well-known military author and the Dean of Wargaming. Also, joining today's show is columnist and author retired Colonel Austin Bay.
Jim and Austin, welcome. Thought we'd talk a little today about how the Middle East is just sitting on a knife's edge. Since the last time we've talked about Gaza and Israel and the Middle East, Jim, a lot has happened.
Yes, and apparently a lot more is going to happen because Israel has declared war on Hezbollah and is bombing into Lebanon as we speak. So I don't know if this will be the end of Hezbollah, but it may take heavy casualties. They also fired their shells into northern Israel and killed a bunch of Jews, children who were playing soccer, or football as they call it. And that certainly agitated a lot of people on both sides.
Austin, what about the I want to call them assassinations, but there really were decapitations of the Israelis taking out the Hamas leader in Iran and the Hezbollah leader in Lebanon. What do you think about that?
Well, the plot assassination, the extension of the war to Tehran, was so deftly planned and bad pun coming, executed, that the Israelis have to have Iranian intelligence tapped or compromised to be able to get that kind of knowledge, access, and who knows what story's correct. I've read that the bomb had been planted in this room well before the assassination attempt. If that's the case, then they knew that the Hamas, Hezbollah, and proxy leaders, the Iranian proxy leaders, used this suite when they were in Tehran, and it was put there, deep planning that take advantage of it when it occurred, or that it was done when the Hamas leader showed up in Tehran. But is that legal when you're fighting a terrorist organization? The terrorists, they live by assassination, surprise assault, and declare the entire world to be a war zone. So after Munich 1972, Mossad has made it clear that you kill us like this, you are liable for us to kill you, since you've made the world a quote-unquote war zone. But next level, get back to what I said a moment ago, is that the Iranians have, government, the Ayatollah regime, has got to be not only looking over its shoulder, it's got to be looking under its feet, looking at the ceiling, because somebody in their own quote unquote trusted among their trusted institutions is providing very intimate information to the Israelis, whether it's or because they're so crooked, who knows? And that should give the Ayatollahs great pause before they do anything.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that came to mind when I heard about the Iranian attack, or the attack in Iran, I should say, was the Munich incident. A lot of people don't even remember that now because they were too young. I know I barely remember it. I was talking to a friend about it the other day, but I can remember it happening on TV, and I was only about 9. So a lot of people don't even remember that. But I suspect that the same protocol is going to be followed by Israel on their assassination attempts will be that they took out everybody that was involved with Munich, and they're going to do the same thing with the attack on October 7th. Anybody
Dan,
involved
Munich 72 is absolutely critical to what's going on now. As far as the Israelis are concerned, but I think as far as anybody who looks at the situation as informed, in an informed manner, you have to understand Munich 72, the Olympics, and that slaughter, which was a huge act of narrative warfare as well. So was October 7th. And this is the Israelis say, okay, you've made the world a war zone. We've offered you peace. You reject it. Now here's war, and here's how we're going to wage our kind of global war, a global subterranean war. I'm kind of compounding it, but I mean the thing is, it's a war by other means, and it's because that's the way our enemies, have decided to fight it. We're going to fight it back, and they fight it back the same way. And it's like, the alleged story that Donald Trump showed the head of the supreme commander of the Taliban a picture of his house and said, make sure that no American soldiers or American personnel are wounded or killed. And the guy was supposed to have said, I know this is a possibly apocryphal story, but it says, if you do that, you think about it. And what does this mean? I said, he's supposed to have said to the guy, think about it. Well, it's a direct saying, you're going to be held personally responsible for it, for that kind of assassination politics. Well, if you shoot, you're going to get shot. And Munich is absolutely essential to it. And in fact, that it's forgotten, it shows you the superficial level of analysis that a lot of the treated by contemporary media. It's, I didn't read it last week, therefore it's irrelevant. No, that's not the case at all. It's look, the Holocaust is essential to this too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, anything.
Yeah.
I
didn't mean to interrupt you, but the thing is, that's something else. Don't forget.
Jim, will the Israelis further try to decapitate Hamas and Hezbollah?
Yes, and they have one big advantage that the Iranians don't have. The Israelis have long had a network of agents, Iranians who are against their own government and were recruited by Iranian, agents, operatives working for Israel in Iran. And now Israel never talks about this, but whenever something happens, it's one of the Israeli-Iranian agents in Iran who is providing a lot of the information. They've been doing this for years, since 2016, when they took off with what was it, 500 tons of Iranian documents on their nuclear program and got them out of the country. They didn't do that just with Israelis. They had a lot of help from local Iranians, whom they took with them. The Iranians were beside themselves because they yelled traitors, but all the traitors were gone, and worse, they realized that there are more of them among us, and we don't know who they are. And that probably has something to do with the recent bombing in Tehran of that guy and the placement of the bomb. And again, the Iranians know about it, but they're certainly not going to mention it because it simply makes them look weaker publicly than everybody in the intelligence business knows to be the truth privately.
So one of the things is the Austin that I know you've tracked is the ineffectiveness of the current U.S. administration's policies. One I would like to just talk about today is the failed, what's it called, an artificial port. I don't know the exact terminology for it, Austin, but it's
a pier. It's a quote unquote amphibious pier. It's an evolution of a temporary piers that we used in World War II.
Right, the mulberries. Yeah.
Yes, Yeah, but this is much more sophisticated, and the pieces are several of the pieces have their own propellers and water jets to adjust them and anchorage. Yeah, but I did. Yeah, I think I wrote something called PIER pressure. That about. Go ahead, finish the question, Dan. I think I know.
I think the pier cost over $230 million, maybe even more. The amount of effort and the cost to actually put it there in Gaza, and the whole thing has failed. And so, the Biden administration has not delivered on getting foodstuffs into Gaza. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Well, look, those piers serve a military purpose. They can be used in a humanitarian crisis or an emergency aid situation. But you could have gotten all of the foodstuffs and medicines to Gaza either through Israel or through Egypt, and eventually that's what has happened. But the Biden administration wanted, and this is my read on this, and that's what I did in the column that I wrote, said they wanted something you could take pictures of and show domestically here in the United States, particularly in areas with a significant number of voters. I'm thinking of parts of Michigan and the like, Muslim voters who are very much supportive of the Palestinians, could show that the Biden administration is doing something. So,
well, I guess now they can take pictures of the wrecked pier that was wrecked by a storm.
Dan, look, you asked what they cost. I think a more accurate figure for the actual cost of the entire network that it takes to put it up there is a little over $300 million, $350 million. And I have read that you can add another $500 million, $500 million or so to what went in the investment to, quote unquote, get it there, support it, but also make sure that it wasn't going to get shot at. Now, I don't know what that means other than there was some deal worked out with the Palestinians or with the Iranians. Don't shoot at the Americans who are operating it. It's also understand that they also had civilian contractors that were part of the operation. But it is susceptible to weather. It's susceptible to, obviously, enemy fire, and it became an embarrassment. It was a waste of $800 million for essentially a photo opportunity for the Biden administration and to use in the 2024 presidential election. And now it's become a black eye, but also that's not talked about, except occasionally I see it on the internet, and it's treated as a joke, which is unfortunate because the technology is very, very useful if you have it and you're in, I gave two examples. An invasion, you need to turn a beachhead into a temporary port, or let's say tsunamis and volcanic eruptions in Indonesia, and you have to be able to. You use it as create a temporary port because all the ports have been destroyed by a natural disaster. It's a very useful piece of technology, but it was abused for immediate, narrow political need by the administration.
Jim, let's pivot back to Iran. Is Iran going to do anything besides using their proxies to strike out at Israel this time?
Well, I doubt it. The last time they tried it last year, it was a fiasco. They fired hundreds of ballistic and cruise missiles, and few of them got through, and none of them, I think there was one fatality and some wounded, but it was basically a very expensive failure. And that's fairly typical of Iranian attacks on Israel. The Iranian people who are savagely suppressed by the IRGC, are becoming, less patient with their theocratic dictatorship. The economy is a mess because of the sanctions and because of the corruption within the government, and it's not going well for the Iranian government, the Iranian theocracy at all. Another problem is the attacks by Hezbollah in the north, in Lebanon, prompted especially the loss of Israeli children in a bombing attack. These are the Druze, a minority that is persecuted by the Iranians, and not by the Muslims, for not being Muslim enough. They're considered heretics. But anyway, the Israelis accept them, and that's why the Israelis are basically taking revenge in their name, and they are basically out to seriously hurt Hezbollah. They'd like to destroy it, but to do that, they'd have to carry out a ground invasion, which they might still do. The Hezbollah has, when it's active, it's a constant thorn in the side of Israel. In 2006, they went in and they basically swept, southern Lebanon of Hezbollah. But the minute they left, Hezbollah kept coming back in. Another problem with the Palestinians, with Hamas, is that they're a big believer in involuntary martyrs, as they call them. They love to see Palestinians being killed by the Israelis, and they literally surround themselves, the surrounding military facilities, their underground hideouts in Gaza with civilians. That's why the civilians are trying to get to Egypt. They can't get into Israel because the Israelis know that the Palestinians, the Hamas, will send in agents disguised as refugees. The Egyptians don't like that either, but they certainly allow supplies to reach them. When the supplies come into Gaza, a lot of them are plundered by Hamas. They literally steal them. They stick them in their underground, layers, as it were. In fact, a recent attack, the Israelis are trying to clear out Gaza and the hundreds of kilometers of tunnels they have under there. And when they went into a couple of those tunnels, they found them piled high with aid, foreign aid, food aid, which wasn't getting to the Palestinian people, was simply being stockpiled by Hamas, which was using it for their own troops, but a lot of it's going to go onto the open market and sold for cash to fund more terrorist activities. So you've got to be careful trying to be helpful in the Middle East. Unless you hand deliver the food and watch it being consumed by the people it's intended for, it's going to be hijacked.
Yeah, that's a sad situation there. Austin, let's switch to the Red Sea and the area there. Israel bombed one of the Houthi bases. The question is why hadn't the U.S. done the same thing earlier?
Well, Dan, let's go back to one of our past ones. Jim and I had a disagreement about whether the Houthis had been sufficiently pounded so that they were going to stop. And I said, no, the only way you're really going to pound them is to, and I had a scenario where I said, send the big boys. Use standoff 2,000-pound joint direct attack munitions from B-52s, B-1s, no reason to use B-2s on this, and just to hit that entire valley area that they launch a lot of their use for to launch a lot of their attacks. It's not just the valley area. I know they have positions that are up close to the coast and the like. It's not that you're necessarily going to erase them, but you're going to give them so many headaches and concussions that you'll at least silence most of their attacks on sea commerce for several weeks. And we may get lucky and actually kill some of the command and control sites and so the Iranian advisors that guide the Houthis' attacks. You can also step up interception of supplies and weapons, munitions from Iran. We know that a lot of it moves by sea. I suspect that there is some that moves by land because of corruption and smuggling routes, but those can be also can be bombed. And your payoff is that suddenly the civilian shipping, commercial maritime activities, the maritime insurance rates drop, and everybody pays off because suddenly goods are cheaper, and it's cheaper because you don't have to go around the Cape of Good Hopes, go south around Africa to connect Europe to East Africa and Asia. And we could do that. They're still here, the Houthis. They're still shooting at U.S. ships, U.S. allied ships. They're going after selected merchantmen, freighters, primarily in the Red Sea, and they're occasionally trying to put a ballistic missile into Eilat, the Israeli port on the Red Sea, trying to get a media spectacular out of it. And okay, the Houthis, but they really are. They're just an Iranian front, is all they are. The real head of the Hydra, as phrase used, is in Tehran. Tehran's responsible for it. Tehran gives Hezbollah the capabilities to launch rocket attacks on northern Israel and kill Druze children, which is what they did. D-R-U-S-E. Jim already mentioned it, but they're an Arab minority religion considered heretics by other Muslims, and they put themselves open to the draft in Israel. Israel is a good place to be a Druze. It's not a good place to be a Druze in several other predominantly Arab countries in the region. It's so you have to deal with Iran ultimately, and Jim doesn't think the Iranians are going to embarrass themselves with another attempt to overwhelm the Israeli surface-to-air and surface-to-space missile defense system and drone defense system. I'm not sure they wouldn't, but the thing is they were terribly embarrassed. They discovered that SDI works, Strategic Defense Initiative, a lot of the American work and Israeli work, and they're producing what we've got with our anti-missile missiles was on display by the Israelis, and to some degree by assistance that the Israelis got from the Jordanians and the U.S. as well, and stopping that Iranian air and space assault. The Israelis may need to do what they showed they could do when they responded to that, which is knock out the Iranian nuclear capacity. And the Israeli government said they're not going to let the Ayatollahs get a nuclear weapon. That might be the way to send the message very clearly to Iran: stop it and quit using your proxies. We're going to hold you responsible. That's I'm not saying anything, Dan, that hadn't already been said, but it is an option that the Israelis have. Can they do it? They showed that they could conduct the counter-terror war in downtown Tehran and do it very, very deftly. So we'll see. It's still Iran is the problem. The Houthis are still there, taking money out of everybody's wallet on when it comes to international shipping, and they're there because of the Iranians.
Yeah, Jim, one of the things is that people don't realize the economic effect that the Houthis have had. Some calculate as much as $250 billion. That's trillion affecting the worldwide economy. It seems like more nations would be wanting to get into helping us to shut down the Houthis. Why hasn't that happened?
Well, first of all, $250 billion is chump change. That's not a lot of money in terms of the world, economy. Secondly, the crux of the problem is in Yemen itself. Yemen has been fighting the Houthis for over 20 years. The Houthis advanced 10 years ago in 2014, and the Yemeni army wasn't able to hold them. The Yemen, ideally, you would want to send, Arab troops, but no Arab. Well, actually, the UAE did send about 15,000 soldiers to Yemen about 10 years ago. Again, this was acceptable. They were Arabs. Some of them were mercenaries, but they were Arab mercenaries. And they slowed down the Houthis, but they eventually pulled them out. But basically, it takes a ground invasion to clear the Houthis out of northern Yemen. And of course, since nobody's been willing to do that, be the Middle Eastern countries or even Western countries, send in a couple of brigades of Marines, and you probably clear them out real quick. But there'd be howls of protest about, these infidel soldiers going in there and killing, fellow Muslims. But at the same time, the reality is the Yemen government would be much appreciative down there about that. I mean, that down south in Aden, the capital of, not the capital, it is the current capital. The Houthis occupied the Sana'a, the traditional capital up north. The Houthis and the other, Islamic terrorists, they will use extortion. And if you fall for the extortion, which the Israelis do not do, that's why the Islamic terror groups hate the Israelis so much, they will not play ball. But the Western countries will. And the Western countries have to realize that unless you stop compromising with these people and basically kill as many of them as you can, the problem is not only going to continue, but in many cases it grows. Iranians didn't realize this. That's why they're so concerned about their home situation, where they have a growing network of pro-Israeli operatives, working for Israel inside Iran. They've tried to turf these out, but there are too many of them. Again, these were the ones who helped spirit the half ton of the Iranian documents out in 2016. So the situation isn't all that complicated. It's a matter of applying enough force to put the fire out. I mean, just swatting it here and there, and then boom, it pops up again, is not going to work. It may feel good, maybe have some political credibility, as the Americans sometimes try and do, but basically, you got to stomp it out. It'll come back again, but it'll be out for quite a while, decades, maybe more. And if you kill enough of them, as the Israelis have demonstrated, you don't have many problems with them. The Israelis have done this time and time again. And as Austin pointed out, they use the targeted assassinations, which they are now using again, as Austin pointed out, to go after the people, the individuals responsible, the leaders at least, and any others responsible for the recent attacks in Israel. This is the same thing with the Olympics in 1972. So there's no halfway solution. You go all in, or you're wasting your time and resources.
Dan, I'd like to make a comment on the chaos in Yemen. Yemen has been long before the Iranian Ayatollahs, Yemen was chaotic. I can give you a bit of an example. The Turks controlled it in the early part of the 20th century, 1908, 1909. A rebellion broke out, and the Turks shifted some of their troops from what is now Libya, but it was Tripolitania and Cyrenaica, the Turk provinces, and it exposed Libya to attack, which the Italians did with a Turco-Italian war. The Turks sent a division down there to try to calm the place down. It was hill tribes, and part of it was in northern Yemen, which is Houthi land. But the chaos now, the high-tech chaos, is sparked and fed by Iran. Iran knows it benefits from chaos in Yemen because it gives them a proxy that can close the Bab al-Mandab, which is the strait that connects the Red Sea to the Arabian Sea, Indian Ocean. And
The Suez Canal.
And attack the Suez Canal as well.
Oh, no, he cuts off the Suez Canal. That's what's happening now. Suez Canal revenue. And the Suez Canal brings in $10 billion a year for Egypt, and that's down by half because of all the nonsense out in the Red Sea.
Well, the other thing is that the Iranians play this choke point game at in the Persian Gulf and the in Indian Ocean, and they can close that off. But having chaos in Yemen allows them to shut down the Red Sea. Also gives them a way, as Jim just pointed out, to economically screw with the Egyptians and screw with the Israelis. And so it goes back to Iran exacerbating a situation, giving the Houthis weapons, providing them with weapons and training, so that they become a high-tech guerrilla group, but also high-tech pirates. And Iran, the Ayatollahs think they're geniuses until they pay for it. And they pay for it, the way they have to pay for it is economically, and then ultimately with, if they're playing with the fire of assassinations and terror, the Israeli response has been since Munich 72 targeted assassinations. And they say it's a form of tit for tat. And if the Ayatollahs have to, after the recent assassination in Tehran, they have to be concerned about their own personal survival if they do something to push the quote-unquote the genocide against the Israelis. And that has been, for decades, they've referred to Israel as a one-bomb state, meaning one nuclear weapon wipes out Israel. And they sit and laugh about it. Maybe they should stop laughing. That's
another problem with the Iranians is they are sitting on a powder keg. They have been under sanctions for over a decade. The theocracy, the religious dictatorship that runs it, is extremely unpopular. The problem with a mass uprising is that the IRGC has made it clear, the guards, as it were, that they would kill lots of Iranians if there were any such problem. But if you push the people hard enough, and that's what they're doing, you will have a catastrophe for Iran. Now, the problem is a lot of older Iranians remember when Iran was, when the monarchy was still functioning more or less, they traded with Israel. They had great relationship with Israel. Everybody's prospering. And the old timers are telling the kids, they say, look, things were a lot better back in the so-called bad old days when we were at peace. We traded with Israel. We traded with the West. A lot of the ancient aircraft, like they have some F-14s that are still operational, were purchased by the Shah, when he was in power, because the Iranians were a major ally of the West until the theocracy, rebelled in the 1980s. Well, actually, the government fell apart during the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, and that's what gave the religious dictatorship a chance to assert its power. And so one of the bad side effects of that war, it was who I think Henry Kissinger said, we hope both sides lose. Well, in effect, both sides did, but the Iranians actually lost a lot more. The sanctions have reduced them to poverty. They're losing a lot of people. They're going to lose a lot more. And the Iranian people would want nothing more than to be free of their own theocracy. But, how do you do it? If you rebel, you're going to see a good portion of the Iranian population murdered by the Iranian Islamic Guard. But a lot of Iranians are saying, two things. One, maybe it's worth a shot. And secondly, why don't we get rid of Islam? The Iranians had in the 7th century, I think it was, Islam forced on them. And a lot of Iranians have been talking about, well, let's bring back the old the fire god religion. What the heck? I forget the name of it.
Zoroastrianism,
exactly. Bring that back. That never caused us the problems this damn Islamic nonsense is doing. And I think that that might happen. I mean, it's already fermenting among the people. But right now they're held down by the armed forces, as it were, the guards, the IRGC. Who are basically vowing to kill, but even that's weakening. When they've been having these uprisings, economic uprisings, in Iran in the last 10 years, more and more of them are occurring in areas where the IRG does most of its recruiting from. The backcountry areas that were more pro-Islamic. So Iran. Now this may sound silly right now. It's silly until it actually happens. Most Iranians are fed up with Islam and what it's done to Iran. And Iran's neighbors are fed up with what Islam in Iran is doing to them. So, a lot of the Iranians are not stupid. And they basically say, I think we could solve a lot of problems if we dump the Islam. Now, there are hardcore, Islamists, the clergy and what have you. But if the majority say you're done, then you kill all priests. I think that was one of the many arguments used during the European religious revolution. To solve the problem of violence. Kill the priest. Kill the snake's head, and the snake will be helpless. Now we don't like to talk about it in these enlightened times. But as enlightened as we are, the fundamentals are the same as they were in the medieval period and during the Renaissance. The last times the Iranians, basically the Pahlavis, they faced down the Ayatollahs literally and told them, look, you guys get out of hand, we're going to kill you all, and they backed off. And the minute you let them run free, they run free and they go for you, and that's what's happening.
Dan, let me make one other point. Just it's a selfish point. The 1996 edition of A Quick and Dirty Guide to War by James F. Dunnigan and Austin Bay. The critical line in the analysis of Iran is the big, and I'm paraphrasing, but is the decisive issue. The big problem in Iran is when are the Iranian people, when do they become willing to die for their country, for their freedom to oppose the regime? That's from the 96 edition. And here we're almost 30 years later, and that's still the critical issue, which Jim just outlined, Jim just described. It's not only there's a good job on the cultural issue and religious issue, because there are so many aspects of quote-unquote Iranian Shia Islam that are Zoroastrian, that it's clear that it's got the cultural overlay. But there are major cities, last time I did any research on it, it was 5, that have water problems because of the corruption by the regime and not fixing the pipes. And Iran, it was under the Shah, you had electricity, you had cleaner water, you had services, you had more money, and you had a stability that the Islamic revolutionary regime has utterly destroyed. And but they're not. Are they ready to take on the IRGC? Jim's told you what the Revolutionary Guard say. They're going to kill to stay in power. Yep. Terrible situation.
Yeah,
kill or be killed. It's a question of who gets wiped out first.
Right.
My money is on the Iranian population.
Mine is too, Jim, but it's going to be a bloodbath. That's it.
Yep. Well, it's time to wrap it up. And I think one of the things we can all conclude that all the problems in the Middle East go back to Iran. And
no, not all of them, but a lot of them.
And a lot of them can be basically eliminated if you eliminate the theocracy in Iran, which the Iranian people agree with.
All right, we'll talk to you gentlemen next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye.